The storyteller welcomes you to another nightmare. Plug in your earphones, close your eyes, and let us begin.
I still remember the sound their feet made on the stone, bare, cold, and impossibly slow. One by one, they turned their heads toward me. Not the villagers, the dead. I'm not the kind of man to scare easily. I've been a priest for almost 10 years now. I've seen grief, despair, even evil in its quietest form. But nothing prepared me for what I saw in Urto in the winter of 1952. They told me it was just a forgotten mountain village. They didn't tell me about the dead. I arrived in Urto on a Wednesday. Snow had started falling the night before, and the roads were slick and narrow. The village sat in the shadow of the Vajant Mountains, tucked so deep into the hills that it felt like the end of the world. I was sent there to replace Father Benedetti, who had died suddenly. Heart attack, they said. No one talked about it much. No funeral, no mourning, just silence. The village itself looked frozen in time. Stone houses, crooked shutters, a small chapel with a cracked bell tower. Fewer than 100 people lived there. They were kind in that cold, distant sort of way. Smiles that never touched the eyes. They kept their distance. No children, no laughter. And every night, without fail, they locked their doors at sundown. My second night in Urto, I took a walk after Vespers. The moon was full, and the snow gave everything this strange, pale glow. That's when I saw them. A group of villagers, maybe 20 of them, walking toward the cemetery. They were carrying candles. No light, no laughter, just quiet humming. A low, rhythmic tune I didn't recognize, almost like a lullaby or a dirge. I watched from behind a tree as they entered the cemetery and formed a circle around several graves. Then they began to dig, not with shovels, with their hands. I should have left. I should have turned and walked away. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen, as they lifted corpses from the ground, real, decayed bodies dressed in fine clothes. Black suits, white gloves, faded dresses. One of them still had a wedding veil on. And then they danced, slow, reverent, the living and the dead, spinning gently in the moonlight. I felt sick. I wanted to cry, or scream or vomit, but I couldn't move. I watched until they returned the bodies to their graves and buried them again, smoothing the snow over the dirt like nothing had happened. And then they all turned and looked directly at me. The next day, I confronted the mayor, Signore Bellotti. I told him what I saw. He didn't deny it. He just said, "It's our way. One night a year, we remind the dead of their place." I asked what that meant. He looked at me, and for the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. They must remember they are not among us, that they are not welcome to return. I left in disbelief. That night, I locked my doors. I prayed harder than I ever had in my life, but sleep never came, because just before dawn, someone knocked on my door, 3 times, slow, heavy, like bone on wood. I tried to leave the next morning. My car wouldn't start. The engine had been ripped open, literally ripped, like claws had shredded it from the inside. I decided to walk 5 kilometers to the nearest town, but the road was gone. Covered in snow? No, gone. Like it had never been there at all. I ran back to the chapel. I locked myself in the study, and I wrote. I wrote everything I saw, every word. At some point, I must have fallen asleep at the desk. When I woke up, there was a note slipped beneath the door. One sentence, They invited you to dance. Brief silence. And beneath that, my own handwriting. I almost said yes. That night, I watched them again. I didn't hide this time. They were waiting for me, in the cemetery, in the snow, and the graves were already open. They beckoned, not just the villagers, the dead, and they were smiling. One of them was Father Benedetti. He extended his hand. His mouth opened, and he whispered, "It's not death we fear, it's being forgotten." I don't remember how I got back to my room, or how the door was locked, or how the snow stopped falling. But I do remember one thing. I remember wanting to join them, just for a moment, just to feel something older than time. I left Urto the next morning. I never went back. The church never asked what happened. They assigned another priest. I never heard from him again. Then, in 1963, the Vagent Dam collapsed. A wall of water killed almost 2,000 people, including everyone in Urto. The entire village was erased. But I don't think it was the dam. I think they were buried again, for good this time, and I think they were angry. Sometimes, I dream about that night, the circle, the song, the hand reaching for mine. I wonder what would have happened if I had said yes. And some nights, when the wind is still, I hear it, that soft humming, from just beyond my window, inviting me to dance. I still hear the whispers in the rocks. You've been heard. That was the last thing I remember before the landslide hit. I'm not the kind of man to scare easily. I've studied ancient rituals, death cults, and the darkest corners of human belief. But nothing prepared me for what I encountered in Sorin, a remote mountain village in Turkey, during the summer of 1987. They called it the Bone Festival. I arrived in Sorin on a Tuesday. The village was nearly inaccessible, nestled high in the mountains, surrounded by dense forests and jagged cliffs. The air was thin, and the silence was oppressive. I was there with a team of anthropologists to document a rare cultural ritual. The villagers had agreed to let us observe their ceremony, but they warned us not to interfere. The first night, we were invited to a communal meal. The food was simple: stewed lamb, flatbread, and yogurt, but the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. The elders spoke in hushed tones, casting furtive glances at the mountain peaks. I should have left then, but I stayed. The ceremony began at dusk. The villagers gathered in the central square, forming a circle around a large bonfire. The elders emerged, draped in cloaks made of stitched-together animal and human bones. Their faces were obscured by masks carved from wood and bone, their eyes gleaming with an unsettling intensity. They began to chant in a language I couldn't understand. The sound was guttural, rhythmic, like the beating of a heart. As the fire crackled, I felt a strange pressure in my chest, as if the mountain itself was watching us. The air grew colder, and the ground beneath my feet seemed to tremble. One of the elders approached me, his mask inches from my face. He whispered something in my ear, something I couldn't comprehend, but the meaning was clear. I was not welcome. I stepped back, my heart pounding in my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes of the ritual. The chanting, the dancing, the bone-clad figures moving in a trance. Then I heard it, a voice, not from outside, but from within the rocks themselves. You've been heard. I jolted upright, my breath shallow. The room was empty, the silence deafening, but the voice persisted. "You've been heard." I tried to dismiss it as a figment of my imagination, but the words echoed in my mind, growing louder, more insistent. I wasn't alone. The next day, the village was in chaos. A massive landslide had struck, burying part of the village under tons of rubble. The elders were unfazed. They claimed it was the mountain's response to the ritual. "The mountain has answered in blood," one elder said, his voice devoid of emotion. I was horrified. The villagers had sacrificed their own people to appease the mountain. I tried to leave, but the path was blocked. The landslide had cut off all routes. I was trapped. As the days passed, I began to feel a presence, something watching me from the shadows. The whispers grew louder, more urgent. "You've been heard." I ventured into the mountains, seeking answers. Deep within a cave, I found what I was looking for. Carved into the stone walls were images, figures draped in bone cloaks, dancing around a fire. The same figures I had seen during the ritual. And beneath them, etched into the rock, were the words, "The mountain listens. The mountain remembers." I realized then that the villagers hadn't just performed a ritual. They had awakened something ancient, something that had been dormant for centuries. And it was angry. I managed to escape Soren, but I was never the same. The whispers followed me, haunting my every step. "You've been heard." I tried to forget, to move on, but the memories lingered. Then, in 1990, a massive earthquake struck the region. Soren was destroyed, wiped off the map. Some say it was nature's wrath. Others believe the mountain had finally exacted its price. But I know the truth. The Bone Festival wasn't just a ritual. It was a warning. Sometimes, when the wind howls through the mountains, I hear it. The whisper, "You've been heard." And I wonder, what else is listening? I still hear it, my name carried on the wind, whispered not by the living, but by something that should never have known it. This is what happened to me in the Langtang Valley. And if you're smart, you'll never go near that place. In 2011, I was part of a small trekking group hiking through the remote Langtang Valley in northern Nepal, not far from the border with Tibet. I was 27, curious, restless, searching for something spiritual, maybe. I wasn't sure what. What I found instead still haunts me to this day. This is the story of a sky burial that didn't work. There were 5 of us in the group, 2 Canadians, a woman from Germany, my friend Lucas, and me. We had hired a local guide named Dorj, who was quiet but kind. He warned us early on. The mountains aren't just rock and snow. They listen, he said. We laughed it off. The Langtang region is remote, wild, and almost untouched by modern life. We passed through ancient monasteries, small villages with prayer wheels spinning endlessly, and yak trails carved into the cliff faces. It was humbling. One afternoon, around day 5 of the hike, we came upon a stone ledge overlooking a steep valley. There, below us, was a body, laid out in the open, not buried, not burned, just there. Dorj told us we had stumbled on a sky burial. It's a rare ritual where the dead are returned to nature. Usually, vultures come and carry the body away, piece by piece. It's meant to help the soul ascend. But there were no vultures, just a group of masked figures in long red and black robes, surrounding the body in a perfect circle. They were chanting, not melodic, not peaceful. The sound was low, guttural, almost animalistic. It shook something in my chest. The body was wrapped in linen and adorned with beads and saffron strands. From a distance, I could tell it was male, but something was wrong. The air around the body shimmered like heat waves, even though the temperature had dropped. Lucas pulled out his camera. George grabbed his wrist hard. "No pictures," he whispered. "You don't understand." We returned to our lodge in silence. That night, none of us slept well. I dreamt of the body, of its mouth opening slowly, of it calling my name in a voice that wasn't human. The next day, we passed the same ledge. The body was still there, unchanged. No decay, no vultures, and the same masked figures, still chanting. No food, no shelter, no movement. Lucas turned pale. "That's not normal," he said. "That's not natural." On day 3, the body was still intact. Even the linen wrap looked untouched. It hadn't rained, it hadn't snowed, it just stayed. The villagers we passed wouldn't speak about it. One elderly man simply said, "The soul refused to rise." I asked what that meant. He looked me in the eye and said, "The ritual went wrong. The mountain knows, and it wants payment." That night it began. The whispers, they came from the mountain echoes, we thought. Just the wind, maybe. But then I heard it say, "James, you've seen." I sat bolt upright. Lucas was already awake. "You heard that too?" he whispered. His eyes were bloodshot. We tried to sleep with headphones, with earplugs. It didn't help. It wasn't in our ears. It was in our heads. Over the next few days, we all began to change. Marla, the German woman, refused to eat. She said the body was watching her in her dreams. Tom, one of the Canadians, left early. He couldn't handle it anymore. He tried to hike out of the valley alone. He never made it. 2 weeks after we returned to Kathmandu, Lucas called me in the middle of the night. He was in Bhutan solo hiking. Said he needed to clear his head. He sounded off. Kept saying he couldn't shake the feeling that the ritual had opened something, that we weren't supposed to see it. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "It's following me, James. It knows my name." That was the last time I ever heard from him. His body was never found. It's been over a decade. I haven't been back to Nepal. I haven't hiked. I can't even go near the mountains anymore. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear my name whispered through the trees outside my house. Sometimes, I see flashes in my dreams of that body still fresh, of masked figures turning their heads in perfect unison to look at me. I tried to rationalize it. Science, psychology, but some things can't be explained. The villagers said the ritual had failed because the soul refused to rise. But what if the soul didn't want to leave? What if it stayed? What if it attached? Lucas once told me that sky burials are meant to free the soul. But if you mess it up, you trap something, and it doesn't like being trapped. If you ever find yourself in Langtang and you hear chanting in the wind, don't stop to look. Don't try to understand. Just keep walking, because once it knows your name, you're already part of the ritual.
Before we move on to the next story, if you like true scary stories, please subscribe to Storyteller and click the bell icon for more creepy tales every week.
Have you ever stayed in a place so steeped in history that it feels like the past never left? A place where the whispers of bygone eras linger in the air, and the line between the living and the dead blurs? This is the story of the Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. a place where the echoes of the past refused to fade. It was the summer of 2015 when I first set foot in the Mount Washington Hotel. The grand structure, with its red turrets and sprawling lawns, stood like a sentinel against the backdrop of the White Mountains. I had heard the rumors, the tales of ghostly apparitions, unexplained noises, and the lingering presence of a former resident. But I never imagined I would become part of the story. Room 314, the Princess Suite. The very name sent a chill down my spine. I had read about the hauntings associated with this room. The flickering lights, the sudden temperature drops, the faint scent of floral perfume. But I dismissed them as mere folklore, stories to entertain tourists. As I stepped into the room, everything seemed ordinary. The four-poster oak bed, the antique furnishings, the view of the hotel grounds. It all appeared as it should. But there was an unsettling stillness in the air, a heaviness that I couldn't shake. That night, sleep eluded me. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of the old building settling. Then, around 2 a.m., I heard it, a soft rustling, like the sound of fabric brushing against skin. I turned toward the noise and froze. There, at the foot of the bed, sat a woman in a flowing gown, her back to me. She was brushing her hair, the motion slow and deliberate. Her presence was so real, so vivid, that I could almost feel the coolness of her touch. But when I blinked, she was gone. The next morning, I mentioned the incident to the front desk clerk. Her face paled and she leaned in close. "You're not the first," she whispered. "Room 314 is known for visitors. Princess Carolyn, the original owner, loved that room. Some say she never left." Princess Carolyn Stickney, the wife of Joseph Stickney, the hotel's original owner, was known for her beauty and elegance. After Joseph's death, she remarried a French prince and spent her summers at the hotel. She passed away in 1936, but many believe her spirit still roams the halls. Over the next few days, I spoke with other guests and staff members. One guest reported hearing soft footsteps outside their door at night, only to find no one there. A staff member described seeing a woman in a Victorian dress descending the grand staircase, only to disappear before reaching the bottom. As I sat in the lobby, the weight of the hotel's history pressed down on me. The grandeur of the building, the stories of its past, and the inexplicable events I had experienced all converged into a singular truth. Some places hold onto their pasts, unwilling to let go. As I checked out and left the Mount Washington Hotel, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The whispers of the past seemed to follow me, a reminder that some stories never end. They merely wait for the next listener. So, if you ever find yourself in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, and you're drawn to the Mount Washington Hotel, remember this: you're not just visiting a piece of history, you're stepping into a living story where the past and present intertwine, and the spirits of yesterday still walk among us. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unknown. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your mind curious. You never know what stories are waiting to be discovered.